Hello, welcome. Today I am going to talk to you about negotiation as both an art and a technique. Negotiation is an inherent part of human nature. We negotiate every day in various areas including labor, personal, professional, and more. It's essentially involved in everything. My book Negotiation Art and Technique, whose central axis and whose added value is the conceptual map of negotiation, a concept map that is my authorship and that explains the entire negotiation process, and that it is very important that you understand that concept map so that you have the necessary elements to carry out your negotiations at all times, both as an art and now as a technique using this map. The negotiation concept map is illustrated in the figure, and it is and begins when people with common and opposing interests become what we call negotiators. But at the same time, negotiators have attributes. They have four fundamental attributes. The first of these is leadership, the second is power, the third is interest, and the fourth is information. Leadership is the ability that we have to make others or the other or the counterpart do it on their own and motivated without giving them an order. The power on the contrary, and the ability that we have to influence in others to do our will, but enjoying some of the tools of power that we will now see later, the interest in the third attribute of negotiators, which are the real needs and which are sometimes not directly seen and are not easy to observe in practice because they are generally hidden. And finally, the fourth element of negotiators is information, which is very important because information is the basis of any negotiation, and it is the most important raw material element in terms of power, which is the second attribute. It can be exercised in many ways, but here we are not only mentioning several few forms of power. The first of them is coercive power, as the power we have to make our counterpart do what we want by force, that is, in a coercive manner, with him with the purpose of offering a punishment or force the other through force. Physical or economic force or force of power, the other element of or other tool for power is in reward or punishment. We can reward the aid to someone and that empowers our counterpart. We can give him compensation and that gives him power. Or can we also, faced with the threat of punishment, force him to make the person serve our interests?
Then there's the power of the information, because information, it's also a way of power. Whoever has the information has power. There is also the legitimate power that is power. What are the rules? Yes. And in the rules, they give us power. The laws give us. Let's see the power of the experts. The people who have knowledge have power in negotiation. If I am expert, I have more power than the other. In that aspect, in the
of knowledge, charisma, that is the ability that people have with their personal skills of conviction, the power of planning, and the power of relationships. Well, once negotiators become, people become negotiators. Following the map, we can say that we arrive, a negotiation is carried out, but the negotiation takes place in three environments, so to speak. The first is the physical space, the second is the environment, let's say the emotional environment or the virtual environment, and the third is the personal style of the negotiators. So the physical space of the negotiation can be mine, it can be that of the counterparty, or it can be a neutral space. I can play local, I can play away, or I can play in a neutral place. It depends on the circumstances. We cannot tell ourselves that one space is better than the other. It depends on the circumstance. The environment, because it is the emotional environment in which all negotiation takes place, which can be hopefully a cordial environment, an environment of respect where there is kindness, wherever there is pleasure. It can also be a formal environment, which is an institutional environment, so to speak, which is made to make the negotiation serious and following a procedure like that, which occurs in organizations or negotiations, since they require a lot of importance and the signing of contracts, for example. Then there's the atmosphere. Antagonistic, an environment is antagonistic when our counterpart has positions totally opposite to the one we have. That is to say, it is very difficult to negotiate like this because we are facing two quite distant extremes, but it is possible that the negotiation environment will be different. It's a hostile environment, it is an atmosphere that no one wants, but it is an atmosphere of war, an atmosphere of tension, an atmosphere of fighting. In that many times one does not choose it, but that it occurs and that one has to face it. Ideally, the environments are not hostile. Negotiation can also take place in an environment of indifference when there is negligence towards the other person, when we do not give them the importance they deserve. Then it is also an environment that I would not say is not pleasant. Even that indifferent environment can be a negotiation strategy. And finally, within the third element, now is the personal style of negotiators. It is very important that we as negotiators can identify the negotiation style that our counterpart has or the negotiation style that we can exercise according to the circumstances or agreement. Also to our own style of negotiation. Everyone has their own style. We have the Al style, fighter fighter. He is a combative person who sees negotiation at all times as a battle of power where he always wants to impose himself. Is the dictator there? The dictator is a person who wants to impose his will at all costs with no room for discussion and real negotiation. And his mindset is my way or nothing is what I say, and that's it. Sometimes it is difficult to negotiate with dictators, but we have to negotiate with them and we must find a way to do so later. We'll see how the hagglers are. They have a negotiation approach focused on obtaining the best deal through the constant exchange of offers and counter offers. A rascal is a person who is now asking for a reduction or who is now asking for an increase. This is competitive negotiation, which we can also say is a negotiation. An assertive negotiator is those people who want to win and the other loses. It is a negotiation style, win lose looking only for the maximum profit for me, even at the expense of the counterparty. So it is also not pleasant for a competitive negotiator to confront him. There are also other negotiators who are the conciliator or what we call the accommodative, who prioritizes the relationship and gives in to avoid conflict. It is those people who accept what we say because they want to avoid the conflict. It is not him. It is not the best position in certain circumstances because the idea of negotiation is not to play to lose but also to win. But you have to know how to do it so that the other can also win. There's the negotiator, he's evasive, an evasive negotiator. He is a person who avoids conflict and postpones negotiation, that is, avoids negotiation. It seems to me that it is not so acceptable to evade negotiation either because sometimes negotiation is necessary and no matter how much I want to postpone it, at some point it has to happen. So you have to look for the right moment for it. Is the negotiator analytical or a rational negotiator? They are very technical little people who rely on logical data, facts, and information while minimizing emotions. He is a negotiator that we can say is rational, and he is the ideal negotiator who is a collaborator and integrator who seeks to win win, who seeks solutions that benefit both parts of the world. In the world, we could find people that they were collaborative but not or integrative, but it doesn't necessarily happen in the real world in negotiations. Well, after that negotiation has physical space, an emotional environment, and a style of people, what we call an argument is set up. It is not a fight as such, it is an argument. It is a difference of criteria where it is very important to take into account two elements of negotiation, which are the positions and interests. Position is what people show us. It's already an offer or it's a request to say something, that is, and I ask so much for the product or I offer talc. That is the position of both one party and the counterparty. Positions are what is manifested, but exposures hide real interest. What is the essence of negotiation? In reality, what I have been able to analyze in practice and what I have been able to study is that the most important thing in negotiation is knowing the interests. Sometimes it is not so much posterity, and that we have to look for how to do this, whether by asking questions, investigating, or psychologically analyzing the counterpart to know their real interests. I would say not with the aim of taking advantage, but with the aim of being able to know what the real interest is, to see how I can approach that interest and be able to develop a successful negotiation, knowing that the discussion develops based on positions and based on interest. We are already proceeding to apply a method for conducting this negotiation, for conducting this discussion. And there are several methods of negotiating that it is very important that we as negotiators know about. The first method of them is haggling or negotiating. The traditional method, that is offer, counter offer, asking for a reduction or asking for an increase. Yes, it is a method that is very typical of our culture, but it is a quite valid method and that can be practiced and achieved results. He who haggles always gets some result. Another very important method is cooperation. It is to seek a win-win, hopefully done in a rational way. To be able to know the interest of the counterparty, my interest, where there is honesty and where there is transparency, the parties cooperate and a win-win negotiation can be developed in which there will be neither winners nor losers. There will only be winners because both parties will be satisfied when there's a winner and there's a loser. In a negotiation, there will always be dissatisfaction and the possibility of new negotiations will always not be nurtured. So the cooperation method is a rather recommended method. Another negotiation method is the assisted negotiation method. The assisted negotiation method is one in which one third person intervenes. That third person may be a mediator who is a conciliator, or an arbitrator or judge who is a binding person. So when two parties, the counterparty to the negotiation do not agree, one third can look for a conciliator, a person who later advises nothing but who does not oblige, or an arbitrator who is a person who advises in good or bad faith but who does force a decision to be made. Another method of negotiating is the method of negotiating by force that is very fashionable in the world today, which is through weapons, through economic punishment, through social pressure, or any physical or virtual tool that is used to force the other to do what I want. This is a pretty real trading method. It is typical of our days, but it is a rather insane method, but it exists and we have to know it. And will there be any circumstances or negotiations in which we have to apply force? Hopefully not in an unethical way, but I can use it. Another negotiation method is the distributive negotiation method, which is a distribution method when, e.g., competitors share their market shares, then share the bouquet or share the cake according to their capabilities. So it is a method that can also be valid in practice. Or the competitive negotiation method, which is the negotiation method of real competition. What is that? I always try to beat my competition by giving competitive advantages, offering better, giving better offers, giving better added values. Is pure competition, is pure capitalism. So the competitive negotiation method is a method, well, in which in practice it is also valid after the discussion takes place. Applying all these methods, what has to be reached is an agreement. And that agreement can be an informal agreement, which is a chatted agreement where the word prevails, or it can be a formal agreement where there is a contract where there are clauses. Where is legality? Yes, a formality, but the negotiation does not end with the agreement. It is possible that after negotiation has been negotiated, negotiation situations occur that are called renegotiations. And with more information, as you can see here in the arrow, the negotiation can continue and it is a cycle that never ends. When you go and buy a vehicle at a dealership, the negotiation does not end when you leave the dealership with the vehicle. It continues because the warranty comes, the claims come, the waiver comes, the possibility of buying a new vehicle, of returning the vehicle in part payment and buying another. So the negotiation does not end, but there is an element of agreement that is the best alternative to the negotiated agreement. This is a basic concept from William Uni, one of the best and most recognized negotiators on the subject of negotiation from Harvard University, which says that the best negotiation is one that aims at the interests of both parties, that is, where each party knows the interests of the other and the interests of both parties are satisfied. But let's say that's in theory, because in practice it's suddenly difficult to find that any negotiation leaves if 100% satisfied both parties. Suddenly it is possible that one of the two parties. In conclusion, what I can say to you is that negotiation has to be planned. All negotiation, and generally negotiations that affect our lives or the lives of other people, have to be planned. A prior study and analysis has to be done before it is developed. You must study the counterpart. That's why I explained to you the different trading styles, so you know. What style does the counterpart have? For me to know how to negotiate with that style according to her style should. You must also know and look for an appropriate physical environment, and the most appropriate one, both physical and virtual. And you must know the interests of the contractor, thoroughly investigate the interests of the counterparty, choose the best possible method, and seek agreement that better satisfies the parties. Conclusion: the key to any negotiation is to be able to know the true interests or needs of the counterparty with the aim of 1. Offer an alternative improvement to the agreement that mutually benefits the parties and has been to have a lasting relationship. And attached to this video, I'm going to develop a test that you can access, so that they represent the different concepts, and in subsequent videos we will expand each one of the elements of the conceptual map, which, as I told you about my work, and let's put it this way, is an added value for all those people who want to develop a negotiation, both in the personal and professional spheres, with a smaller structure and in a successful way. Thank you very much.